Let's get into it. Today's top story coming out of the Washington Post, which is reporting the NFL may allow teams themselves to create their own policies in terms of protests during the national anthem. So, some sort of analogy here. In a sense, the federal government would give power to the states to decide this topic here. You know, with the federal government leaving policies of marijuana, for example, to the states, the NFL could perhaps let the power into the team's hands, and then they would decide whether or not they would require standing or kneeling during the national anthem, or I guess allow kneeling would be the latter option there. So as we stand right now, there is no legislation from the NFL, from teams, or anything of the sort that states that players are required to stand during the national anthem, right? So players can kneel right now and perhaps be surfaced to, you know, perhaps, I guess, some sort of punishment for the teams or anything like that. But nothing from the NFL, no suspensions, no fines, no anything like that. So there's nothing written in stone here about this topic. So I think putting the power on the teams would probably make matters worse, in a sense. You got to think about it. What if one team has a policy that players should stand during the national anthem, and another team has a policy that says, well, do what you want, and that team that allows the players to do what they want travels to the team that requires the standing? It just creates this muddiness here where I think it should be avoided. Just too many variables, and I think things could get ugly if that were the case. Now, the Washington Post is also reporting that the NFL could decide from anywhere from straight up requiring standing from all the players in the NFL to straight up saying you can do whatever you want. So the NFL could perhaps have its own legislation. It's not just about the teams, perhaps. So there's different avenues here that could go on. This will be a topic of discussion during the owners' meetings in Atlanta later this month. So different pathways that we could go about this. Where do you all stand on the national anthem debate? Should players be required to stand during the 2018 NFL season and then beyond? Hit me up in the comments section. This is a topic that will continue to be discussed throughout the summer because the owners themselves and the NFL itself is discussing it. So there's resistance on both sides of the aisle here. There's the camp that believes that players should be able to do what they want, a la Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem and Alejandro Villanueva, you know, coming out of the locker room and standing. You know, there are policies, or I guess thought processes, that say players should be able to do what they want. Now, there's the other, you know, realm of this that's essentially in favor of requiring players to stand during the national anthem. There are the people that believe that because these players are employees of the NFL, they should listen to their employer in the sense that they should stand during the national anthem. Because I will say this, there is in the policy, or at least in the legislation, that says players are strongly encouraged to stand during the anthem. So obviously not required, but strongly encouraged. Dwayne chiming in here on the Cam Rogers Show, episode 100, saying, this isn't a dictatorship nor a government. It's entertainment, and the players should do as they please during the national anthem and concerning it. Appreciate the comment there, Dwayne. I think a lot of people are into the camp that you sit in right now. You know, there's this debate here about the First Amendment rights, but also the debate of following along with what your boss wants, right? You know, I've drawn the comparison before. An accountant working for somebody at a firm or something like that, and the boss says that they can't kneel during the national anthem. You know, let's say they play the national anthem during work every morning. You can't kneel during that. What are you going to do? Kneel anyway? You're going to be fired. You're going to be looking for a new job. You're going to be on Indeed.com looking for openings. So a lot of people use that same kind of thought process here with the players, in that because they are working for the NFL, they should listen to what the legislation currently says, and it says that they are strongly encouraged to stand. I'm not saying that's my position. You guys know my position on this topic. I personally feel that the players should do with what they please. Now, when you have players filing grievance cases against the NFL and saying that the NFL owners are colluding against me and all this stuff, talking about Kaepernick and Reid, you're hard-pressed to really say that they're going to be employed pretty darn soon in the NFL because, well, if you're suing your employer, why would they hire you? Thomas, chiming in on Facebook Live here. When you're on the clock, you will have to abide by certain things. Whatever your boss decides, that is you have to abide by or don't work there. Same thing for the NFL. So Thomas is kind of talking about what I was discussing with this analogy here where you're working for your employer. If your employer wants you to stand or it's highly encouraged to stand during the national anthem, you should do so. So Roger Goodell is going to have his hands full, ladies and gentlemen. He'll be working on this topic with all the NFL owners right now, but let me say this. The wrong solution would be to let the teams create this policy, because I'm telling you, it's going to get messy. You're better off doing just some blanket legislation, whether it is standing or letting the players do with what they please. At the end of the day, and I think the sad thing about this topic is that I don't think we will ever have 100% happiness among all the sides. If we do come to some sort of compromise, there's going to be still some resistance on both areas of the aisle here. And it's sad, and I think it's going to continue to be a topic of discussion out there. And Colin Kaepernick, of course, was recently in discussions with the Seattle Seahawks. There was the report that Kaepernick was going to go work out for Seattle, that Seattle asked him about his plans for kneeling in 2018, and he said he may not, he really doesn't have a plan, and the Seahawks canceled the workout there. So, I mean, this is obviously going to be a very real topic as we go forward, and the NFL Players Association is right in the middle of all this as well, really keeping tabs. And, of course, they're in the players' corner saying that the players have the right to kneel during the national anthem because there is no legislation that requires it to do so. So this is a developing story here. There are a lot of variables to this. It's a fluid situation, no doubt about it. But the owners are going to meet in Atlanta later this month to perhaps hammer down some sort of legislation, whether it's an NFL blanket policy that says players are required to stand, whether it's a blanket policy that says players can do whatever they want, or the NFL delegates the powers to the teams to create their own policies. And, of course, just like how, topics in the United States are very controversial, such as marijuana and abortion, all this stuff, those are policies that are left to the states. They're still very controversial, right? Could be the same case here if the NFL delegates the power to the teams to decide whether or not players are allowed to kneel and whether or not they are required to stand. So I really hope the NFL either just figures out some sort of blanket type of legislation here, or they just let it be. They stick with what they have right now, and they say that, you're strongly encouraged to stand during the national anthem, but you know what? If you feel that you need to deliver some sort of message, whatever the message is, and you feel like you need to kneel during the national anthem, you should do so, or you should feel free to do so. So, I mean, it's, again, a very controversial topic, of course. Just imagine Bob McNair, though, who has made some really bad comments of late, being able to implement his own policy for the Houston Texans, and just imagine not even the sheer controversy in the NFL scope, but the divides within the Houston Texans organization, because I'm betting you that there are players in that locker room for the Texans that want that freedom. Not necessarily that they would kneel, but they want that choice. All right, so there you go. Changes could be coming to the national anthem policy across the NFL. That's our top story here on the Cam Rogers Show, presented by the Game Time app.